Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Today we're tackling something that I think is incredibly useful,
Yeah.
and that is expressing yourself when you're talking about the future in English.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So this is going to be helpful in any kind of situation,
Right.
whether you are just casually talking to friends about plans,
Yeah.
or if you are in like a high-stakes interview
Oh, yeah, for sure.
and you need to really impress somebody with your goals and what you want to achieve.
Absolutely.
So we have a really great resource that we're going to be pulling from for this deep dive.
Cool.
It's called English Future Plans: Goals, Dreams, and Aspirations.
Okay. Nice.
And I think that, a lot of people listening are probably thinking, well, I kind of already know how to talk about the future.
Right.
But I think what this is going to give you is like a boost to take it to the next level.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like, you can always get better at something.
Right.
You can always take it up another notch.
Exactly.
So add some nuance.
That's exactly it. So it's going to give you the vocabulary, it's going to give you the phrases,
Well,
and some strategies as well to
I
really
like
just
that.
knock their socks off
Right.
when you are talking about the future.
Awesome.
Okay, so the guide kicks off with like essential vocabulary, which I thought was a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it makes this really interesting point about different types of goals.
Okay.
And I think that this is something that sometimes we forget.
Mhm.
We get so focused on those long-term, huge dreams and goals that we have, but
Right.
we forget about the smaller ones
Yes.
that kind of act as like stepping stones to get there.
Absolutely. I think that is so key
Yeah.
because, sometimes we get so focused on the big picture
Yeah.
that we forget about, celebrating those smaller wins
Right.
and recognizing those smaller goals that we're achieving along the way.
Absolutely.
So like, for example, if someone's goal is to get their dream job at a tech startup, well, there are a lot of smaller goals that go into that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Not
mastering a
original.
certain coding language
Right.
or, getting a certification or something like that. So those are all short-term goals
Yeah.
that are going to contribute to that ultimate long-term goal.
That's a really good point because I think that sometimes we, when we're talking about the future and we're talking about our goals, we're thinking big picture.
Mhm.
But it's important to have like those stepping stones. And I like that you use that analogy of like building a bridge
Yes,
between where you are and where you want to be.
exactly.
And that those smaller goals are the pieces of that bridge to get you there.
Love it.
Now, I also really like that this guide doesn't shy away from the realities of life.
Yeah.
It talks about milestones and setbacks,
Mhm.
motivation obstacles, all of those things that
Yeah.
inevitably come up when you are pursuing any goal.
Absolutely. I think that's really refreshing because,
Mm,
let's be real.
Yeah.
Life rarely goes exactly according to plan.
right.
So it's nice that this guide, not only gives you the tools to talk about those successes,
Mm,
but also, how to talk about those setbacks and how to talk about, maybe adjusting your plan
mm-hmm.
based on some unexpected obstacles that
Yeah.
popped up.
That's a really good point because a lot of times,
Yeah.
there are resources out there that'll talk about achieving your goals,
Uh-huh.
but it's always like this straight line.
Right.
And I love that this
Yeah.
acknowledges that there are going to be curves in the road and how to deal with those.
Yeah, and I think having the vocabulary to talk about that
Right.
is really important.
Exactly. And that's where the action verbs
Yes.
come into play, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So we're talking about words like plan, aim,
Mm-hmm.
hope, intend, pursue.
Yeah. All about taking action.
Yes. All about taking charge of
Yeah.
those goals and making them a reality.
I love that.
And, I think about this in my own life. When I decided that I wanted to learn Italian,
Yeah.
I think for a long time I was like, oh, I hope to learn Italian someday.
Right.
But when I made that switch in my mind to I am actively pursuing fluency in Italian,
Yeah.
it totally shifted my mindset.
It's amazing how just a little change in wording can make such a big difference.
Yes, yeah.
It's like you're signaling to yourself
Mhm.
and to others that you're serious about
Yes.
achieving this goal.
I love that. And then there are those time expressions as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think give your goals a sense of grounding.
For sure.
So we're talking about, phrases like in the near future, next month,
All right.
by 2025, or even someday for those, really long-term goals.
Mhm.
But it's like, it's like pinning those aspirations to a timeline, and it
does.
makes them feel more tangible and real.
It's interesting because, those time expressions can also add like a layer of strategy to your communication. So let's say, for example, you're in a job interview
Okay.
and you're talking about your career goals.
Yeah.
You might say something like, I aim to lead a major project within the next 2 years.
Oh, that's a good one.
So that time frame not only showcases your ambition,
Right.
but it also hints at your understanding of the company's growth trajectory.
Ew, I like that.
You know, it shows that you've done your research.
Yeah.
You've thought about how your goals align with the company's goals.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this, we've got a good grasp, I think, of the vocabulary. But now the question is, how do we actually use these words
Right.
to craft these sentences to
Yeah.
really showcase our goals effectively?
Okay.
So that's what we're going to talk about coming up
That's good.
in the next section of our deep dive.
Awesome.
We'll be right back.
Cool.
Okay, so we've got all of our vocabulary all set to go.
Right.
Now let's actually talk about how to put these together into sentences to really, showcase our goals.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of times what people get tripped up on are the sentence structures themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they have the vocabulary,
Yeah.
but they're like, how do I actually say this in a way that sounds
Yeah.
natural and
The
comfortable?
flows and
Exactly. And that's where this guide, I think, really shines.
Okay.
Because it gives you clear structures
Okay, cool.
that you can use. So
Yeah.
for those short-term plans,
Mhm.
you can start off with phrases like, my short-term goal is to, or I plan to by.
Okay.
So think about, how you can use this in conversation.
Yeah.
My short-term goal is to network with industry leaders at that upcoming conference.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Or I plan to have a solid draft of my proposal ready by next Friday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I like that one.
You see?
Very specific.
Exactly. Very specific.
Action-oriented.
Yes.
And it includes a time frame.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah. And for those long-term goals, you can use structures like, my long-term goal is to,
Okay.
or I hope to in the next, however many years.
Right.
So for example,
Yeah.
my long-term goal is to transition into a management role, or I hope to launch my own consulting business in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I like that because even though it's a long-term aspiration,
Right.
you're still giving it a time frame.
Yes.
So it shows that you've thought about it.
Yeah.
You've thought about the path ahead, even if the destination might be years away.
And that's where I think it's really important to connect those short-term actions to
Yes.
those long-term aspirations.
For sure.
And this is something that the guide does beautifully.
Okay.
So, you could say something like,
Yeah.
my short-term goal is to develop my public speaking skills, which will be essential for achieving my long-term goal of leading workshops and seminars.
Oh, I love that.
So you're showing them that you have this plan
Yes.
and you know how you're going to get from point A to point B.
I think that kind of clarity is so valuable because it shows that you're not just dreaming, you're actually putting in the work to make those dreams a reality.
Yes. Now let's talk about the dreams.
Okay.
So those big, huge,
The big ones.
the ones that light us up.
Yes.
How do we express those with that same kind of clarity and confidence? I think that, this guide encourages us to use phrases like, my dream is to, or I aspire to. But then it goes a step further and it says, add some depth to that, explain why this dream matters.
Oh, I like that.
So it could be like a personal anecdote. It could be something that, like a specific experience
Right?
that sparked your passion.
Yeah.
Or even something, deeper like your values.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, my dream is to travel the world, you could say, ever since I was a child, I've been fascinated by different cultures.
Okay.
My dream is to travel the world experiencing those cultures firsthand
Yeah.
and sharing those stories through my writing.
I love that example.
Yeah, you see how it just adds?
It's so much more vivid and compelling.
Yeah, and it makes people feel something.
Exactly. It's like you're not just stating a goal, you're inviting them to share in your passion and understand what drives you.
And that brings us to, I think, another crucial aspect,
Okay.
which is explaining our motivations.
Oh, yeah.
So why do these goals matter to us? What's the driving force behind them?
Yeah, because sometimes we get so caught up in the what that we forget to explain the why.
Exactly. And it's like reading a book and not understanding the author's intent.
Exactly.
And why did they write this?
Right.
So, the guide highlights some common motivations:
Okay.
self-improvement, family passion, security legacy, helping others.
Yeah, all great motivators.
Yeah. And it gives you those phrases that you can use to articulate these.
Okay.
So you can say, I'm motivated by a desire to create something beautiful and lasting. Or this goal matters to me because it aligns with my values of sustainability and community.
Those are great examples.
So you see, it's not just stating the motivation.
Yeah.
It's giving it context.
It's connecting it back to something bigger.
Yes.
Something that resonates on a deeper level.
It's like giving those goals a heartbeat, a soul.
I love that.
But, you know, it's not just about the what and the why.
Right.
It's also about the how.
The how, okay.
So how do we actually achieve these goals, and how do we communicate that effectively?
Okay.
And I think that's where those future tense structures come in handy.
Oh, well.
You know, I'm going to, I plan to.
Those are the action words that bring those plans to life.
Absolutely. And the guide suggests, you know, break those plans down into smaller steps.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to write a novel.
Right. You could say, I plan to start by brainstorming ideas and creating an outline. Then I'll dedicate 2 hours each day to writing.
Okay.
And finally, I'll seek feedback from a writing group before submitting my manuscript.
Wow, that's a great example.
Yeah.
It shows that you've thought about the process and you're committed to taking concrete action.
Yes.
And I think it also makes the goal feel less daunting.
Right.
Both for you and for anyone you're sharing it with.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Life happens.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Things change. You know?
Sure.
We have curveballs thrown at us.
Absolutely.
So how do we navigate that uncertainty while still maintaining that, you know, that optimism and that forward momentum?
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's what we're going to get into
Okay, cool.
in the next part of our deep dive. All right, so, you know, we've talked about crafting those sentences and breaking things down into smaller steps.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Real life isn't always a straight line.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
There are those detours, and sometimes things change completely.
All the time.
So how do we deal with that uncertainty in a way that, you know, we don't lose sight of our goals,
Right.
and we still maintain that sense of optimism and forward momentum?
Yeah, I think that's where this guide's advice on flexibility really comes in.
Okay.
It's all about embracing the unknown, acknowledging that plans might change, and just adapting accordingly. And it gives you the language to do that.
Yeah, I like that. So it suggests using phrases like, I'm considering, it depends on, to express that openness to change. So for example, instead of saying, I'm going to move to London next year, you could say, I'm considering a move to London next year, but it depends on how my current project unfolds.
Right. I like
So you're not, you know, closing any doors. You're still, you know,
keeping it open.
Yeah, keeping it open. But you're also being realistic about the fact that things might shift.
And I think that's really important because it, you know, shows that you're not, you know, set in stone on one specific path.
Yeah.
You're open to, you know, seeing what happens and adjusting as needed.
Right. And I love that the guide really emphasizes maintaining a positive outlook.
Oh, yeah.
Even when there's all this uncertainty around.
Absolutely, because it's easy to get bogged down in that doubt and uncertainty.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's important to stay positive and focus on the possibilities.
Yeah. So instead of saying something like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, or I'm really worried about this, you could say, I'm open to new possibilities. I'm excited to see what happens next, or even whatever happens, I'll make it work.
I love that because it's all about, you know, embracing the journey with all of its twists and turns and just trusting that you'll find your way.
Right. And, you know, it reminds me of that saying, sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck.
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
So it's about having that flexibility, that resilience.
Absolutely.
And I think that when you're talking about the future, there's another really important layer to all of this that I think is often overlooked, and that's culture.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you know the different cultural norms and values influence the way that we talk about our plans and our aspirations?
That's a great point because, you know, what might be considered appropriate or polite in one culture might not be in another.
Right. And the guide gives some really interesting examples. You know, in some cultures, there's a huge emphasis on detailed, specific plans. Like precision is key.
Right.
Whereas in others, it's more about a fluid, adaptable approach.
Yeah, more go with the flow.
Exactly. And it's not about locking yourself into a timeline. It's about setting an intention and allowing things to unfold organically.
Yeah. I like that.
And it just makes you realize that, you know, communication is not just about the words themselves.
Right.
It's about understanding that context.
The unspoken rules.
Yes, and the
Nuances.
that really shape how those words are received.
Absolutely.
And being mindful of those cultural differences is huge, especially in today's world where we're all so interconnected.
Especially in a globalized world.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
How can you take all of this and actually apply it to your own life?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah, and I think the key takeaway is that talking about the future is a skill that can be learned, honed, mastered.
With practice.
With practice, exactly. And so it's about, expanding that vocabulary, embracing those sentence structures, becoming aware of those cultural nuances.
Be mindful.
Yes, but it's also about something more than that.
Okay.
It's about connecting with other people on a deeper level.
I love that.
It's about, sharing your authentic self, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, even your uncertainties. And when you do that, it opens the door for collaboration support.
Yeah.
And I think a whole world of possibilities.
Absolutely.
So go out there, practice those phrases, experiment with different approaches, and most importantly, embrace the journey.
Embrace the journey. I love that.
Who knows what's waiting for you?
Yeah, you never know what exciting adventures await when you start confidently expressing your vision for the future.
That's a great way to end it.